So we are here with Nadia Matar from Women in Green and the Sovereignty Movement. And I have just two more questions for you, Nadia. And you've been so articulate until now, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say. There's been a lot in the news recently about how Trump is pushing annexation because he's concerned about the elections in November, and he believes that he needs to shore up support from his evangelical voters, and therefore he's pushing for annexation because of the evangelicals. And Israel is about to do something that many Israelis don't want to do. Certainly most Jews around the world don't want to do, but it's important to the evangelicals. That's what's going on, and that's what the news is saying. What do you have to say about that? Do you agree with that premise?
First of all, I don't agree with the word annexation, and there's a very big difference. People have to understand that annexation is not what is on the table. Annexation means that you take land that from another country that's not yours, etc. It is used by people who oppose our being in Israel at all. So don't use the word annexation. If you are a friend of Israel, you use the word application of Israeli sovereignty. And that is what is on the table. That's what we want to do.
That was my second question.
Okay. So it's so I already
versus annexation. So okay, so thank you. Let's go. We'll do that
about the Christians, about the evangelicals. To answer your question, shall I answer your question?
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm sure that the evangelicals who believe in the Tanakh want their president to do what God wants to happen, which is that the Jewish people should be in their homeland as a sovereign people. And that's why the person who wrote the Trump deal put President Trump into trouble. Some people even say that our own prime minister was involved in this. And he put the president into trouble because how can the evangelicals agree to this Trump deal if we're talking about giving away part of the homeland? And what we call upon the evangelical world is convince your president that indeed, if he wants to win the elections, and we all want him to win the elections, that he should do what God has asked, that to give this land to the Jewish people, not to any other foreign entity. And I will tell you, I will not mention names, but we met with two congressmen in Oswego in Israel, when we're the place that we set up in memory of the three boys, and we asked them, how can it be? It was very soon after the famous signing in Washington. What is going on here? How come? And also in the Republican platform, the Palestinian state has been abolished, and all of a sudden we're talking about a Palestinian state. This whole Trump deal is basically, its purpose is the creation of a Palestinian state and wrapping it in sovereignty, and pretend sovereignty. And they said, we're embarrassed. We don't know. We don't know what's going on. And therefore, we call upon the evangelical world, convince your president to dismiss this plan and to go for the real plan, sovereignty of the Jewish people, and it will bring stability and real peace for Jews and Arabs alike, because that's what the majority of the Arabs also want.
Now, other people are saying that, in fact, there was an article in the Jerusalem Post just yesterday by a Christian leader that, in fact, sovereignty is not an important issue to the evangelicals because right now they're very focused on internal American issues, COVID-19 and the unrest from the George Floyd riots and the protests that are happening, and the economy that's in free fall in the United States, and that sovereignty is not on the agenda. Most Christians don't even really appreciate the issue, don't understand the nuances that you're describing. Yet, obviously, you are in touch with certain Christians and so tell us about, from your perspective, how do the Christian pro-Israel evangelicals feel about this issue, and what are they currently doing to be involved with the sovereignty movement?
Well, first of all, this is really the time to grieve with our American friends about what is going on by you, and those who suffered from, God forbid, from the COVID or from the terrorist Black Lives Matters, pogroms, etc. We're with you, and be strong and don't give in to terror, which it is. And about your question, obviously, I assume that we do not know all the evangelical leaders, the people we are in touch with. For instance, we have this amazing Reverend Anthony Abma, who has created this organization called, the name escaped, the proper name escaped, maybe you remember, Sovereignty, wow, I have a blackout, but Anthony Abma with the Sovereignty Movement, it's not a sovereignty movement, he has a specific name. I apologize. Anthony, if you're listening. Maybe you can look it up, Rabbi Weiss.
Okay, I'll get it for
Wow,
you.
this is called the senior moment.
Yeah.
Anyway, he created a sovereignty movement by Bible-believing Christians, and that is their message. And they're going forward with this. And we believe that he is
Is
in
it
touch. And he told
Return,
us,
O Israel? Return, O Israel.
"Return, O Israel." Oh my God. Okay, thank you. "Return, O Israel" by Anthony Abma. And he, I suggest you basically interview him, because he knows much more than we do about the situation in the Christian world and how it's divided. So sometimes I also have to say that I don't know the complete answer to that. I know that we're in touch with quite a few people. How many people do they represent? Interview Anthony Abma, I suggest.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And now finally, so we touched upon the language, a difference between annexation and sovereignty. And so you did explain, but why is it important to, to call it sovereignty? And that's the whole world is referring to it as annexation. People might not even know what you're talking about when you refer to it as sovereignty. But why do you insist on the language of sovereignty?
The whole world is calling us occupiers, so I'm going to call myself occupier. I'm here, a resident of Eretz Israel, a Jew, a proud Jew of Eretz Israel, where if you already have to translate the word in Hebrew, settler, is really the inheritors of the land. So I have to go around according to what the world does? Never. And we go according to the truth and the justice. And truth and justice is that it's called application of sovereignty. I'm talking about now the truth on a legal basis. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but I suggest you interview lawyer attorney Alan Baker, who will give you a 50-minute lecture on exactly the legal terminology of why what is going on in Judea and Samaria is not annexation. And annexation is used by those who are not friends of Israel. So those who are friends of Israel, and by mistake you use that word, it is the wrong word, the application of Israeli sovereignty. We're calling upon our own prime minister to be a sovereign leader and do what is best for Israel. And we know that also the President Trump will, in the end, he already agreed that this land is ours. He already knows that the Jewish communities are legal. So do not come up with a plan that will choke the communities, because our plan is to bring here another 1 million Jews. Our plan, our sovereignty movement, we made a national outline plan. How will it look when there will be Israeli sovereignty from the sea to the Jordan on all of Judea and Samaria? We're going to build many new Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. We're going to bring another 2 million Jews here. We're going to have a wonderful life of stability. We are not going to agree to a Palestinian state, not even in principle, because a Palestinian state is something the majority of the Jewish people oppose, is something that is bad for America's interest and Israel's interest, and it is something that the Arabs do not want. So please, our message is very simple. Yes to sovereignty over the land of Israel, never to Palestine.
Well, then I gotta ask you, because you talk about how the Arabs themselves are not in favor of Palestinian statehood, but right now there's a lot of movement by the Gulf states to prevent Israel from moving forward with the Trump peace plan. And so it seems like that the Arab world, it seems to be certainly against sovereignty. But
Okay.
you're saying that there are Arabs who are in support and in favor.
I'm saying don't believe anything they say in the news, because whatever is said in the news is not what really goes on. For instance, people on the left are trying to say that Jordan is against sovereignty, which is a complete lie. Jordan, their worst nightmare is the creation of a Palestinian state, which will endanger Jordan. And we know from inside, from behind the scenes, that the Jordanian leadership is begging for Israel to have sovereignty over the Jordan Valley and not the Palestinian state. Now about the Arabs in Israel. As you know, the Oslo agreements, their first crime, before it was the crime of simply giving away our land, his first crime was against the Arabs. The Oslo agreements basically brought terrorists from abroad and forced it as leaders upon the local Arab population. I will never forget our neighbor here in Wadi Nis, Walid, who saw me during the 90s, them in the beginning of the Oslo Agreement, demonstrating against the Oslo agreements. And he told me, Nadia, be successful, because if you, with your demonstrations against Oslo, because if you're not successful, my village here next to Efrat will become Area B, and who knows what's going to be. And of course, we weren't successful, and unfortunately, his village became Area B. So when you talk about the Arabs in Israel, you have in Judea and Samaria, you have the local Arabs who are very scared to talk. And you have the Palestinian Authority. Of course, the Palestinian Authority says they're against sovereignty, but they don't represent the people. They do not represent, they're corrupt, murderous people who, first, before they murder Jews, they murder their own people who dare to oppose them. So the first thing one should do when we apply sovereignty is to dismantle the Palestinian Authority and talk to the local leaders here who want Israeli sovereignty, to respect Islam by giving them some kind of rule by chamulot. Chamulot is tribes. That is what they want. They don't want a state. They want to be able to be with their own chamula, with their own leaders. Nobody knows that an Arab from Jenin is not going to marry an Arab from Hebron or Bethlehem because they stay in their tribes. So to answer your question, the PA, of course, are terrorists. They're no different than the Hamas, and they are going to say one thing and do not believe them. And the majority of the local Arab population despises them. Just interview Bassem Eid. Bassem Eid will say it, and he is not afraid to talk against the Palestinian Authority, and he represents the majority of the Arabs here. And as I said and repeat, he said it. We don't want citizenship. We understand the Jews cannot give us citizenship. 1.8 million Arabs cannot receive citizenship, but we don't want citizenship. We want residency, and that's enough for us, because residency under Israeli rule is much, much better life than citizenship in a terrorist Palestinian corrupt state. So about the local Arabs. And about the world, the Arab countries, they're doing what is best for their money, etc. And we believe that if Israel is strong and respects itself and says to the world once and for all, we are here, there's never going to be a Palestinian state, they're going to accept that. There's a very famous, with that I'll finish my answer. They keep on saying that the Arabs do terror because of despair. Because of despair, they do terror. It's exactly the opposite. It's because of hope. As long as the Arab terrorists have hope that they can take away our land, there will be terror. Once and for all, that we crush that hope, and we make it clear that here there's going to be Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. And for our listeners in America, we're talking here about Israel with Judea and Samaria that's smaller than the state of New Jersey. That's what we're talking about, okay? And without Judea and Samaria, we're half that size. Israel with Judea and Samaria, sovereign as one state for one people. Our dream and our vision is sovereignty over the entire land with an overwhelming Jewish majority and with a non-Jewish minority loyal to the state of Israel. It's feasible, we can do it, and we will, please God.
Nadia Matar, thank you so much for joining us. I just wanted to conclude with maybe a lesson from the Bible, from the Tanakh. You mentioned the Tanakh and the Bible more than once in our conversation. You talked about how the whole movement was built on the Bible. So last week in the synagogues all over the world, we read from the Torah portion of Shalach, Parshat Shalach, where a majority did not favor entering the land. However, two brave spies, two brave leaders of the Jewish people, Yehoshua ben Nun, Joshua, and Kalev ben Yefuneh, they said, Tova haaretz me'od me'od. Now you and Yehudit and everybody, Anthony and Rivka, his wife, everybody who you're describing, seemed to me like Yehoshua and like Kalev, who are saying Tova haaretz me'od me'od. And so thank you for what you're doing, first of all. But how do you apply the lessons from the Torah portion to the work that you're doing?
The lesson is very simple. First of all, nobody remembers the name of the 10 others because the only two that made an impact on history is those two, Kalev and Yehoshua. And their strength was from where? From Hebron. They say that Hebron gave them the koach. When Kalev went to Hebron, that's when he received the koach, the strength of staying loyal to the land of Israel. Mm. I have the incredible privilege of working with Judith Katzover, who is from Hebron, who's one of the 13 women who were in Bet Hadassah as one of the renewed Jewish settlements. And I have the privilege of driving almost every day to Hebron to pick her up, to work with her, And it is Hebron that gives us, and Hashem, and God gives us through Hebron, the strength. Whenever we go, Judith and I, to anything that we do, we go to Marat HaMachpelah, to the Machpelah cave, to the tomb of the patriarchs, to receive the strength from our forefathers, from Caleb ben Yefuneh, Yoshua ben Nun, and from God, that said very clearly, this land, this entire land, was given to the Jewish people for an eternal, for eternity, and it is our job to keep this word. Sometimes we're a minority. When we were in 2011, nobody spoke about sovereignty. Thanks to our many partners, and again, we're not alone, but we are many partners and our donors and our friends, etc., etc. All together, we turned the minority into a majority, and I believe we'll do the same now with this deal of the century. One thing is for sure: nobody does deals about their homeland. This is our land, like our children. Not like nobody, no mother would give up 4 children in order to safeguard the health of only 2 of her 6 children. Like that, we are not going to give up even 1 inch of our homeland. It is all ours for the stability and the peace of the region. That is the best way to go. Thank you for your incredible work, Rabbi, and thank you to all the listeners.
Okay, thank you, Nadia. Have a good day.